The end of another gorgeous summer's day here in Lincolnshire. But we're not talking about the beautiful countryside or the weather today. We're here to talk about my latest acquisition, this late 2005 Volvo S80 first generation, the granddad car. Now, this is an important vehicle and you don't see that many of them on the roads, and there weren't that many sold in this country. In fact, its probably only claim to fame is it was used by Virgin Atlantic to chauffeur its upper class passengers from their homes to Heathrow Airport in London, and it also marked a very new design philosophy for Volvo, and one might say also kept the company going, because before this car came along, Volvo were in a lot of problems. They were in talks with Renault for a merger, and they were actually working on the platform of the Renault Safran for a new vehicle. Renault, and I would say looking back a good thing, pulled out and took the platform with them. And this left Volvo with a big problem. They had to produce a new platform, had to come up with a new vehicle, and they had to produce their own engine, which of course is the now venerable 5-cylinder. Now, this was designed by a British car designer called Peter Horbury, and it's rather based on the concept car that debuted in 1992, I believe. Could have been 95, but I think it was 92, called the ECC. And that was a gas turbine engined hybrid. And it shocked the world, A, because of what a combination, but also the design. It wasn't angular anymore. It represented a new sort of phase of design for Volvo. The S80, which then, as I said, came out for the 98 model year, featured a lot of the design cues of that ECC. And if you go and have a look at YouTube, Wikipedia, etc. about the ECC, you'll see a lot of that mimicked in this. So this was also a big thing for Volvo because it wasn't a sensible car. It's a saloon. It's an executive saloon. You're going up against BMW 5 Series with its sort of dynamic driving and performance. You're going up against the Mercedes E-Class, which was, renowned for quality, reliability, comfort, and also, of course, the Audi A6. And you had to make a bit of a decision. I'm going to get a Volvo. I'm not going to get one of those cars. So what's it really like? Well, no, it won't drive like a 5 Series, and no, it's not as plush and comfortable and well put together as an E-Class. But this I can forgive, because Volvo hadn't really done quite this before. What they'd done before was take quite utilitarian cars and make luxury versions of them ostensibly for the American market. So what's it like inside? Well, it's comfortable, as you might imagine. Now, this is a one owner from new before I got it, single owner. Doctor owned it before. Before I get inside, I will just point out he did option all of the chrome, and it does look like I've been on eBay and bought a few stick-on additions for the vehicle. But if we look at that profile just again, I do like the fact that he had the larger 18-inch rims that he has powder coated in a shadow grey. I like the colour of the car, and things like what normally is amber on these vehicles is clear. It adds a bit of modernity. So this was designed in the mid-90s, launched in 98, ran until 2006 when the second generation took over, which was based on the Ford Mondeo platform. It wasn't as wide, as long, as bulky as an executive car. And I think it stood the test of time quite well. It might not be to everyone's taste, but then most people's tastes these days are not large saloon cars. But I think it's got a touch of Audi 80 just in that front section there. And this here, that's, I don't know, maybe a little Jaguar-esque, especially that little window there. But it is so solid. Do this to your Japanese car. It's not tinny at all. So, nice wide opening door. I did say it's the granddad's car. It's all the beige. It's the walnut effect. Not as much legroom as you might expect, but more than a V70. The V70 was based on this platform. It came later. the XC70, the S60, the XC90, all based on this, shortened, lengthened as needed. But inside, oh, this is something we've forgotten, car manufacturers. Do you know, I was in a 6-week-old Audi A4 the other day, and the seats are so firm. These are soft yet supportive. Why can't we make cars with really comfortable seats anymore? Anyway, there is no practicality, as you can see. You can't even put some small bottled water in the rear door. I do like the little courtesy lights for the doors. I finally realised my childhood ambition of a car with rear courtesy lights inside the door. I know a lot of Japanese manufacturers have done that before. German manufacturers did it. I like these air vents on the pillar here and not here. They're far more effective there than down here. There's no technology in this car. You just get a 12-volt outlet, and I've used an FM transmitter to Bluetooth, so I can actually Bluetooth and stream music to the rather antiquated radio. You've got a little hook here to put a jacket on. The passenger and driver both have lumbar support. You've got a fixed grab rail, again with a little hook there, and you've got individual reading lights. If you're wondering what these are for in the roof lining, that's the optional extra manual rear sunblind. You've also got a simple pull down centre armrest. It hasn't got cup holders or storage in it. So yeah, it is very comfortable, rather elegant here. It's not shouting anything. Seat pockets, your feet go under the seats. You've got nice amount of legroom there really, but not as much as you might expect, shall we say. So that's the back. What about luggage space? Well, because you haven't got as much rear legroom, you can see just how much we've got going on here with storage, and this huge back window and this rather nice design tailgate, which I like, has the kind of tail lights sculptured to it. Because this is a late model, we've also got LED brake lights. So inside the boot, it's quite shallow from here to here, but it goes back so far. 60/40 folding seats with the B&Q wood pass through, because we don't use skis after all. You release the back seats from here, and there's this handy little thing here that pulls out and clips into here, which divides the boot so you can put your shopping there and it won't all tumble around. It would have been a bit more clever if there was other options than just this triangle of the boot, but I suppose it's better than nothing. Not many cars have dual lighting for the boot as well. Spare space saver tyre under there, nice low lip to get things in and out of the car. So yeah, overall I've only had estates before. I don't know why my camera suddenly decided it doesn't want to focus, but we're back in focus. And I thought this may be a bit of a problem, or SUVs, etc., but it hasn't been. We've also got a nod to the Germans of the warning triangle being placed into the boot there down. This beautiful soft carpeting. Again, this is very 90s when it was built. You know, you have to think about this. This was kind of set in stone back then, and then it just did its production run. So that's the boot, the back. What about where the important stuff happens? Well, again, all of the cream and the beige. But this is getting on for 20 years old, this car, and it is in wonderful condition, as you can see. So let's just step aboard and see what we've got going on. Well, what a beautiful clunk you get with the doors. Now, there is a lot of things in here. If you've looked at or had or seen a Volvo V70, you'll be very familiar with certain things. And yet there's a lot of change in here, because this was produced first, then the V70 followed, and they couldn't allow the V70 to be quite as good. So whilst a lot of the switchgear is carried over, things like the air vents, the dashboard in this is narrower, so there's more room here for the passenger, and it is of higher quality overall. It's got the optional £1,700 pop-up nav system, which is controlled by an actual remote. So you either set this before you set off, or you give this to your passenger. There is the option, of course, as well, I can maybe show you, of controlling the nav through here, but you've got to kind of figure out what pattern with your fingers does what. The seats, now Volvo seats are very comfortable. These are next level comfort. On previous Volvos with leather seats, they have just been this. If you see this part here I'm referring to, very soft, very nice. This has this extra bit stitched onto it, across it, which is even more, it's almost like memory foam. It's beautiful. You've got a nice little pocket there for putting trinkets in. You maybe get a little 250ml orange juice in the door pocket, but really it's all about the big speaker. You've got the usual creaky wonky center console, but unlike a V70 or an XC70, really padded, beautiful, soft, again real leather, nice to lean on here. You've got a cup holder which opens at light speed. I'm not really sure if that was supposed to once have been kind of dampened. And then the passenger, well, they get this. And I wouldn't really trust this to hold much, but it feels to me like they were like, oh shit, the American market, cup holders, Larson, come and design this. And they were like, oh, well, there we go, that's what we're going to do. So that does date it a little bit. You know, we've figured out cup holders in cars now. But even BMWs and Mercedes were doing weird things with things that sort of popped out of the dashboard and stuff. Here, you could have optioned the telephone. Now, my old XC70 had a telephone here. It wasn't Bluetooth. It was a physical telephone with a keypad. You put a SIM card in it, so you literally had your own number for the car. And you could use hands-free, or there was a built-in actual wired handset under here. I'm pleased this doesn't have it. It was completely pointless. This is a nice little storage area that's cooled, I've found, when the air conditioning's on. It has a nice it's a 6-disc player, CD player, FM, AM radio. It doesn't do Bluetooth, but it has got 8 speakers, and it's very, very nice. Volvo do audio very well. I don't want to change this for an awful one, you know, with a screen. And I see these screens, everybody, the screens. Why is everyone obsessed with the screens? And screens for cars, why are they gloss? Why aren't they matte to reduce the reflections? I know not. But I really don't need to worry about having a screen. I, you know, have existed this long. I mean, my X5 had a nice screen on it, and I just used to keep it with the nav and the map moving. That's all I needed. It's got proper climate control, independent, heated seats, which are operated just like all Volvos with, is it on? And then second setting is, oh my God, my arse is on fire. It has got the very old school automatic 5-speed. Now, my old XC70 had the Euro 4 185 horsepower D5 with the 6-speed Geartronic. This is they're both made by Asin, the actual gearbox manufacturer, but this is the 5-speed. So we're down on horsepower on 163, we're down on a gear, and so it revs a bit harder, it's a little bit more gruff, and it's very slushy. The way the torque converter unlocks at exactly 47 miles an hour, and things like this, and you have very little control. And annoyingly, you have to press the lever in even to go from D43 to L, but you don't have to push it in to go back for some reason. I don't know why you would need to push it in to go down. I can understand pushing in for neutral, reverse and park, but anyway. The handbrake here actually works because the previous owner had the upgraded adjusters put on. So basically Volvos of this era, they came from the factory with a disc rear brake, and then inside is a drum with the parking shoes or the handbrake shoes, and there's no adjuster. So as they get older and worn and the cable slackens, you can't take the adjustment. The only adjustment you can do is pull this off, do a little nut to take up the slack of the cable. It just doesn't work as well. So you can get these little adjusters from Volvo, you fit them, and then you can actually adjust the drums, and you can then take the slack. So now you've got a really effective handbrake. Lovely. What else have we got to say about this? We've got the optional, well, they weren't optional, but they were, this car was 55 plate registered. It was coming up to the end of production. They were just bunging stuff on. So I said about the LED brake lights. This is the chronograph instrument cluster. Really looks quite good until it's nighttime. You see the numbers, they're not backlit. It's just the bezel that is backlit and the red arm. Then it is kind of lit from above with 3 dim white LED bulbs. And you're relying on the reflection off of those numerals, which are plastic, pretending to be metal. And it's just not that effective. And if you want to turn the brightness up, you can, but then things like the radio and the heating and ventilation is really bright and quite distracting, just so you can clearly read the dials at night. So it's a small thing, but it's a shame that they didn't backlight the numbers. Yeah, even the kilometre an hour, it's not even reflective. So if you were driving in Europe, even worse. But hey ho. Lovely stalks, cruise control, volume. It has got automatic windscreen wipers, and this, when you put them on auto, this adjusts the sensitivity, and when they're not in auto, this is the speed delay for your intermittent wipe. And funnily enough, this is fixed, but on the estate that would be your rear wash wipe button. It's got an auto dimming rear view mirror. It hasn't had the sunroof spec. Another thing about Volvos, this is like 19 or getting on for 20 years old. Loads of cars, the headlining sags. This is like new, it's amazing. So very little wear on the seats, very little wear on anything. I mean, if you look at, if you forget driving dynamics and engine and all of that, if you just think about interiors, yes, there are a few things about this car like this and the cup holders that you wouldn't have had in a German rival, right? They would have ironed that out. But for comfort, ergonomics, the look of it, I don't think Volvo did badly at all. I mean, it's so different from what came before it. If you compare sort of older Volvos of the 90s and the way their little switches were and how they did things, it's far more elegant and refined. It's like they've taken what they had and they've just made it just curvaceous. You know, even all of this is really nice squishy material. Even the hard plastics down here, they're covered, so they're not scratchy plastic, but the covering hasn't worn off. The buttons, the black on the knobs hasn't worn off. None of the touch points has worn at all. You know, Mercedes of this vintage are notorious for things coming off and the black rubbing off and revealing. It's a kind of sticky, rubbery feel to buttons and stuff. Even my 2008 SLK from Mercedes, that's starting to go that way, but this isn't at all. So yeah, really nice place to spend. You know, munching miles. I mean, I've been averaging something like 58.7 miles to the gallon. I've only 10 days, so I could probably improve on that. My best in my former XC70 was 44.2, I think, miles to the gallon. And that was if I was being really careful, and keeping it about 67 miles an hour was its sweet spot. So there we go. Let's have a look, shall we, at under the bonnet as well to complete the review. And then I'll tell you what made me buy this car. Can I also just say what absolute fabulous condition the paintwork is in. This has had a special coating. I'll just show you. There is a sticker here, zirconite protected, and it came with a report from this company saying, you know, how thick the coating was on the paint. I think it's a bit of snake oil personally, but what I do know is that other than a little bit of chips there, there's no swell marks. There's no paint chips. I mean, it's got 3 washer jets, by the way, because 2 aren't enough. The guy that owned this was a doctor, and he spent absolutely thousands of pounds on this. He had it serviced at the same Volvo dealer he bought it from, an interim service 354, a major service 790. There was an MOT advisory for a crack on the windscreen, an advisory, so it couldn't have been that bad. He had a new windscreen, but he went to Volvo, and it was this sort of attention to just, oh, this has gone wrong, replace it. The fuel flap, there's a report that says customer states that the fuel flap hinge no longer operates smoothly. So they changed the fuel flap hinge and lock. £459. So from this point of view, it is in amazing condition. 130,000 miles. Oh, glass headlights with headlight wipers. And I bought and fitted new wiper arms and blades because they'd perished, but they work, and yeah, they ain't gonna get scratched and UV damaged like polycarbonate does. So let's have a look under the bonnet. There is the not so much power, 163 horsepower, Euro 3. There is no DPF to clog. There is an EGR. Quite simple. I said to you in the beginning of the video that the dealer, or did I? I'll tell you now. The dealer, when I went to collect the car, said, oh, don't come yet. I've got a problem with the car. It's vibrating terribly and there's a clonking coming from the front end. And my heart dropped. He said, don't worry, I'm going to take it to a specialist Volvo place. So he took it to this guy and they changed both lower suspension wishbones, the two vacuum air mounts. So the clonking was suspension, the vibrations was this. It came to over £500. That's what the dealer paid before I even came and collected the car. Something else I haven't had to worry about doing myself. I've changed myself the upper engine mount. Today it should have gone into a local garage to have the other two engine mounts changed, which are often forgotten about. One's a gearbox torque mount and one's down here, but the guy's got COVID, that's had to be rescheduled. It's had a recent cam belt change, again all genuine Volvo, all done through Volvo. It's had recent discs and pads. So, you know, for a car that cost £2,000, I don't think I went too wrong. There's no rust anywhere. It's just a very good example, and it just goes to show if you've got a car and just keep looking after it, maintaining it, dealing with stuff, they go on and on and on. It's even got lovely condition Michelin tyres all round. Small things like this, you don't go and just buy Michelin tyres on a car if you're not giving a damn about it. So yes, it is in beautiful condition, and credit to the previous owner who loved it as much. He retired apparently and traded this in and got a XC90 hybrid. So lovely retirement gift for him. And I'm got this. So why did I get a Grandad S80? Well, let me tell you a quick story. So I have not posted the video, but there is a video that I made about my XC70 2006, bought simply because when I moved up to Lincolnshire, I was taking a lot of stuff to the tip, I was doing a lot of stuff, and I wanted something practical and comfortable. So I got that, all-wheel drive, raised ground clearance, brilliant. 178,500 miles, and things started to naturally need to be replaced on it, except it was like a lot of stuff. The swirl flaps broke, the EGR cooler went, it needed a new prop shaft, it needed suspension work, and there was something else as well. But anyway, I went around the local garages and I got some quotes, and the cheapest was about $1,650 and the most expensive was about $1,800. And I thought, well, if I spend all that money, although it's a lovely car, it's still 178,000 odd 2006 Volvo. So I sold it. And I got this, because when I started looking at vehicles that I don't want to keep for long, and I'll tell you for why that is in a moment, but I was looking at, you know, cars like VW Passat, Vauxhall Insignia, Mondeo, RAV4, CRV, anything not more than £3,000. And what I was looking at was 4, 5 sometimes owner cars, partial service history, quite high mileage, none of them really loved. And I thought, what about a Volvo? Because a lot of the Volvos are looked after by older people. And found this in Kent, looks after by an older person. Now, it's not great looking, it's not dynamic, but for £2,000, with that work that's been done on it and all of the history and all of the money that had been spent on it by the previous owner, you're not going to get a Passat or a Mondeo or a Toyota that is going to have that level of care and attention to it. So why don't I want to keep this long term? Because I also have a Lexus RX 450h. You see, when the issues with the Volvo were on the horizon, in December last year, I sensibly bought myself online the Lexus. Dependable, reliable, SUV, luxurious, quite powerful, but also low tax, no ULEZ charge when I go to London, etc. Except it had a load of issues. But it was an all right thing because I'd bought it online and I was covered by the distance selling regulations, which means you can reject if you give writing within 14 days. You don't even have to give a reason. And the dealer turned around and said, no, it's fully MOT, no advisories, full Lexus service history, there's nothing wrong with it. It was leaking water in the boot, passenger side caliper was sticking, there was mould on the seat belts. Give me a break. Go to a solicitor, they write to the dealer says provide further evidence, I provide further evidence. I'm not going to go into it all too much because there is a court case coming. Suffice to say, the dealer stops talking to me, hence why we're now going to court in October in Lincoln. I just want the car gone, my money back and my court costs paid for. Then I can buy a kind of forever car. This is the stopgap I should never have had to have bought if that car had been as advertised. I would have sold the older Volvo, had the Lexus, the SLK in the garage for nice days and weekends. Life's good. I've ended up now nurturing this Lexus. I've still got the SLK in the garage and I've got to have this. That's why I needed a cheap runabout with a small budget, nothing posh, nothing fancy, but I ended up with this. So there you are. There is the granddad's car, the Volvo S80 first generation. Not everyone's cup of tea, but it's got a hell of a lot of torque. It doesn't go anywhere very quickly, but it's insanely comfortable.